Welcome to the channel. In this video I'm going to be going over some upgrades that I'm doing to my Ender 6. The first being this Minimus fan shroud. It's toolless, so it's really neat, but I'm going to be adding a second cooling fan, parts cooling fan, to my Ender 6. It's a nice little design. I'm also going to be adding a probe. As you can see here, this is the back plate for the Minimus. I'll have links for all this in the description. And then lastly, I'm going to be installing a cable chain. Since I have to install a new fan and probe cables anyway, I figured I'd go ahead and give this a shot and see how it works out. Now I'm going to also try these little Bowden hooks. I'm not sure on these. I don't know how it's going to work out, but it seemed like a kind of neat idea so that your Bowden runs along the chain, but we'll see how it works. Now I'm not going to do printing for each one of these, but I will go through the slicer settings, things you need to know to get them to print. So starting off, this is the fan shroud itself. We don't need to change the orientation or anything. A couple of things you do want to mess with here is you want it to be 20% infill, and we want to have our supports set to build plate only. Now this one's kind of a bit tricky because there's lots of things that's going on here. Just print it slow and you shouldn't really have any problems with it. I didn't have any problems with it. Here you can see all the supports that are going to be generated. It's quite a bit, especially around the back. That's really the only place that I had problems, and it was because I was printing too fast. So I just had to slow it down. Next up we have our back plate. Now I'm printing the one that has the arm for the probe, but you can print whichever one you want. They're pretty much the same. The thing to note is that you can't use the one that comes with the Minimus. You have to use the one that's designed for the Ender 6. It has these extra holes, as you can see here, furthermost left and then the furthermost right. Those holes fit bolts on your Ender 6. And you're going to print it like we did on the other one, but on this one you do not need supports, and you're going to do 20% infill. Other than that, you're good to go. It's a pretty easy print, not a whole lot to it. So next up we've got our fan ducts, and this is the duct 4010 0L and duct 4010 0R. Now you're going to need to print these with supports on the build plate and 20% infill. They're not bad to print. The supports come right out, zero problem. They look really good actually. And this is our last part for the Minimus system. This is just a little fan cover that'll go over the hot end cooling fan, just so it's not, rotating blades right there. I guess it's kind of an optional print, but you don't need supports on this one. 20% infill. Pretty easy print. Now this is optional. This is the fan shroud that comes with the Minimus for Ender 6 package. The guy who modified that back plate, he also modified the fan shroud. There were a couple of things, it's a little difficult to get the regular Minimus on, so he enlarged the backs of the hooks on here to make it a little bit easier. I didn't go this route. I wanted to use the one in the Minimus package because the guy who makes Minimus is constantly changing his design and optimizing his design, so I wanted to use the most recent one. But if you have problems getting that onto the back plate, this is what you need to come and print. You can tell because it has an actual Ender logo on the left side. Moving on to our chain. This is the front piece that mounts to the actual backplate on the Ender 6. You're going to want to lay it on its side, orient it like I have here. And then you're going to want to add supports on the build plate. And then, like we were doing before, infill at 20%. It's a pretty easy print. Turns out really good. So these are the actual chain links that make up the entire chain. They recommend you print 30 of these. You don't need supports for them. I like doing a couple at a time. You know, you could fill the bed plate if you wanted to, but I just do a couple at a time. Again, you want to do 20%, and again, you want 30 of these, or that's the recommended value that they want. Now these are the little clips that go on the back of each of the links. Technically, I don't think you have to put one on every link. I did. You could probably skip one or two, or do every third, or however you want to do it. You just want to arrange it like I have so that the face out is actually on the build plate. So the little teeth are facing up. And then again, you can print as many as you want. I just do a couple at a time. But again, it's pretty easy build, not a whole lot to it. So this is the back bracket cover next to the last piece we have. You're going to want to orient this one, the large face, to the build plate. Again, you'll have the little teeth or arms sticking up. Now I printed this with support because the way the edges are on those arms are like little teeth. It just helps them out a little bit. An easy print there, 20% infill. This is our last piece. This is the back bracket itself, and obviously this is I saved the best for last here. Now you can print this in several different ways, and I'm going to go over them, but probably the easiest is the way that it comes, the orientation just like this, and then turn on your supports and say everywhere, 20% infill. We have a lot going on with this one, so depending on how good your supports are and things like that, this will print just fine. You'll have zero issues with it like this. This is actually how I printed it. But there are a couple of other ways you can do it. And one is you can turn it over, but there's a problem in doing this, and you can see here when the supports are done. There's this little tiny plateau, if you want, raised piece, and that's going to cause supports to be printed under all of the other parts of the section. And again, depending on how your supports are, it isn't really going to look that good. Now, one of the things you can do to fix that is just sink the part until that little plateau raised portion is no longer there and it's under the build plate, and then prusa slicer is going to take that off. See, that's now under the build plate, so the top will be flat and it'll print nicer, it'll look nicer doing it this way. And that reduces some of your supports so that the internal cavity, where your wires actually go, doesn't need any at this point. That whole thing is empty. And then it'll print a lot nicer not having supports there. Now, if this doesn't do it for you either, you can print it with the face down. Here, let me show you. Let me raise this up like this. And then that's not a bad setup. But again, the problem with doing it this way is that this whole section here becomes a bridge, and it might not work out too well for you depending on how tuned up your printer is. So those are a couple of options for you as to how to actually print this piece. This is the most difficult one to actually get good. So now that we've got all the printed parts out of the way, let's move on to actually disassembling the hot end of this machine. I apologize for my hand getting in the way, but camera positioning is kind of difficult on this machine due to its size. But you want to start by removing the fan shroud. There's 3 screws that hold it on. Mine actually only has 2, but there's another one on the other side of the hot end. Once you get these off, the fan shroud just pops off. Now that the fan shroud's off, we need to get our hot end fan out. And this just has some screws that you need to remove. But you're also going to need to take off the external fan, the parts cooling fan, because some of those screws actually prevent this hot end fan from coming out. So just keep that in mind. You can go ahead and remove your screws though. Now, like I said before, you're going to need to take the external fan off in order to get the internal fan out. So go ahead and pull those screws off, and then of course it just pops right off. And then finally, once we get this last bit out, there is our fan shroud. We won't be needing that one anymore. Then you can take off your existing fan shroud for your parts cooling, because again, you won't be needing that anymore. Careful with those screws, they're very small. And there we go. And that's it. Now, you might not have to do this, but I need to remove this block for my cable harness, I guess you call it. This black conduit. Just these two screws. And then we're going to take off the hot end. Now, you know, while you're doing all of this, it's a good idea to look at your wires, check anything, you know, look everything over. See if things are frayed. Now lastly here we're going to remove these two screws holding our hot end to the back plate. And then we should be done with our disassembly, at least for this side. Now that you got everything apart, now is a good time to go ahead and clean everything up, especially clean out all those fins on your cold end. Wipe off your back plate. Just get everything together nice and clean. Alright, so now it's time to actually put things back together. I'm going to start by putting on this back plate for our Minimus fan shroud. It just kind of actually holds up there pretty well just by itself. Then we need to get our two screws for our hot end. And they just go back through. And we just tighten them up. You want to get these pretty good and tight because you don't want this thing moving around at all. I mean, don't gorilla arm it. Don't want to snap anything off. Just get it good and snug. One of the good things about the Minimus is that it's really easy to check this stuff after this because everything just, you know, pops off. There's no screws in it whatsoever. So now it's time to mount the fan shroud. You can see these indentions here. They match up with these extrusions. Let's get everything out of the way. We'll be careful of your cables for your end stop. And if you have problems getting this mounted, this might be where you want to use the Ender 6 modified version of this. This seems to go on pretty good. Let's get it down. You want it seated all the way on both sides. There we go. That's not going anywhere. So now we need to actually install our stock fans. Now you want to pay attention to these little indentions you've got here, and you want to get your wires tucked in there really good. Else they'll snag on the fan shroud itself as you slide them in because they're press fitted. So you know, if the fan measurements are off, it isn't going to slide in there, right? So again, you want to make sure you tuck those wires in, and then it just slides in, and then kind of route your wires where you need them to go. And then here's our stock hot end fan. You want the label to face inward, or normally that's how you want that to go. We'll do our wires in a little bit. And this is our fan cover. Let's go ahead and get that installed. I mean, again, you really probably don't need this, but you know, I figure, hey, it comes in the kit, and you know, this way you don't just have a fan, open blade fan. It looks kind of cool. It just slides in there like that. Okay, now this is our new fan that we're going to be installing. It's a 4010 just like the stock one. Now we don't have to do any new wiring or anything. This will go straight to the breakout board. I purchased ones with extra long wires. They come in packs of 2. I'll put a link in the description for it. But you want to get them in there good, and then just run your wiring up and over. Moving on. Alright, so now that we've got all of the hot end put together, now it's time to do something with this mess of wires. Now I've removed my conduit already. Just take your time with it, do one wire at a time. That's what worked for me. You could cut it open if you wanted to. I didn't want to go that route. This is our new mount for our cable chain. This is where it's going to actually attach to the back bracket for the X gantry. We just want to get it put on there with 2 screws that we had removed previously from our mount for our conduit. You want to get this pretty tight. So you don't want it moving around once we actually have it up here. That's good. Now we're going to need to feed our wires through, and just do it one at a time. Make it really easy. Try and get this as nice as possible. Just take your time here so that you don't have any binding or crimping. Just do one at a time till you get them all through. Now once you have all your wires up here, I'm going to put a zip tie on it at the bottom to keep everything here, and it should look a lot nicer. Again, you don't want any, super tight wires, but this should bundle it up pretty good. And I'm not cranking down on the zip tie either. I'm just making a little bundle out of it. There we go. Then we'll cut the excess off. Job done. Moving on. Alright, so here's my sections. I've taken 5 regular chains and one Bowden, one with a little Bowden hoop on it, and I put those together, and then I will run each of these cables through that section and make sure you have it oriented correctly so that it'll actually mount up. You just slide one cable through at a time. It's tedious. Now, if you want to try doing this without, go ahead and assemble the chain itself and then put the clips on, please leave a comment and let me know how that works out for you. I thought it would be more difficult to do it that way, but who knows. But there you go. And then just rinse, repeat with each of your other cables. So now that you have all your wires through your chain section, just push it forward until it meets up with the previous section, or in this case the very first section. And just get one side in and then push the other side, and then they're together. Now, I don't know about this Bowden tube, but we'll see how it goes. It's too close. I'll probably replace it. Alright, now once you have all of your sections together, here's the final last piece. It just connects to these 2 existing holes on the back of the frame. Now, you're going to want to get these pretty good and tight. Again, don't go crushing stuff, but you're going to want it pretty tight. This keeps the orientation of the chain fixed. So if this can move, then the chain itself will go left or right, and you don't really want that. So you want to get this good and tight. So now that you've got this pretty tight, let's go ahead and move things and see how our motion is. Looks pretty good. I think we're good. Still not sure about these Bowden hoops. Alright, moving into the home stretch. We just need to reattach all of our wires. Now I'm going to be removing the Z limit switch because it's no longer needed since I'm installing a probe. If you were not installing a probe, leave this connected because you're going to need it, but I don't, so it can go bye-bye. And then next I'm going to be installing the new cable for my probe. Now the probe does not come with this. You need to get it from Creality. It's a special cable designed just for the Ender 6. It connects to the breakout board here in the BL Touch slot. And then for the rest of them, just go one by one and reconnect them. Now for the new fan, all you really need to do is connect it to the empty K-fan slot on the breakout board. There's 2 of them, and only one is occupied. And then you should be good to go. Alright, now that everything is hooked back up and we've prettied everything up, now it's time to actually remove the Z-limit switch itself. Just take out the one bolt and then the whole thing comes out. And job done. So in conclusion, I've been printing with this for about a week and a half and I really like it. I removed the Bowden hoops because they just didn't work. And I had to shim this hot end fan. It vibrated like crazy. Now, for those of you with a keen eye, you might notice that I started this video with a CR Touch and now I have a BL Touch on here. Well, the BL Touch works great. The CR Touch, not so much. Now, it was noted in some of the forums that, you know, you only get 3.3 volts at the breakout board and the CR Touch wants 5 volts. That is 100% true. So if you're using the cable supplied from Creality to attach to the breakout board, you're going to need to use a BL Touch. CR Touch is not going to work. For CR Touch, you're going to need to go all the way down to the motherboard. I didn't want to do that, and I already had a BL Touch, so I just swapped them. So like I said, it's working great for me. As for the cable chain, it's recommended that you have 30 lengths. I actually removed one to help with the up and down motion you see here. I'm only doing 29 now, and that seems to work well for me. You know, it might not work as well for you, but it does for me. So if you did this setup, you know, let me know in the comments. I'm interested to hear how your thoughts of it. But if you like this content, like and subscribe. And like always, happy printing.